Today we're going to talk about kiwis and the benefit of eating kiwi fruit every day. So first, what is a kiwi, aka kiwi fruit? That's its proper name. Well, you see them everywhere in the grocery store, but in case you haven't or don't recognize them, a kiwi is an egg-sized fruit. It's actually a berry that grows on a vine, and it's actually called Actinidin deliciosa, and it originated in China. It's got brown fuzzy skin on the outside, but if you actually cut it open or peel it, it's got this green or yellow flesh on the inside. It's very beautiful. That is sweet and slightly tart, kind of like a strawberry. And there's tiny little rows of black seeds that are edible. Now, I love to eat kiwis, and one or two to eat for breakfast is a great way to start your day. Now, before we talk about the health benefits of kiwis, I want to give a little bit of background. Originally, in China, kiwis grew wild on the vine, and they were collected by villagers for medicinal purposes. So they were actually part of traditional Chinese medicine. And in fact, the first recorded history of a kiwi was during the 12th century, that's the 1100s, during the Song dynasty. And basically, it was called monkey fruit back then. And the reason it got its name is because monkeys would pick these kiwi fruits off the vine and eat them. Now we know that monkeys, from recent research, actually choose fruits and they eat them when they actually need to heal themselves from illness or to heal a wound. This is actually new research that shows that primates actually are just like humans, pretty smart, and they figure out how to use foods in a natural world in order to be able to improve their own health. So monkeys were probably picking kiwis and eating them for some health benefit that they knew about before we knew about. Now, kiwis actually eventually became an agricultural product. It's grown in New Zealand, and that's actually how it got its name, because monkey fruit became kiwi fruit because kiwi is the national bird of New Zealand. And so as the kiwi fruits were exported, they were associated with the country that they came from, i.e. New Zealand, and i.e. they were just termed kiwi fruit. Now, when you buy a kiwi, you want it to ripen. And in order to be able to ripen it faster, you actually just store them in a paper bag and you keep them at room temperature, and they will kind of off gas, and they'll let you ripen in that bag. And once they soften up a little bit, and all you got to do is just pull them out and just squeeze them a little bit to see if they're soft. Take it out and just keep them away from other fruit that might actually emit ethylene gas that can actually over-ripen the kiwi. You don't want them to be over-ripened. You'd also want them to be under-ripened. You want them to be just right. When you eat a kiwi, and by the way, you just cut this brown, furry, big berry open, you slice it right in half, and you just open it up, and it's this beautiful green inside or beautiful yellow inside. It's a great source of vitamin C, and vitamin C gives it some of the tartness that you get from the kiwi. And vitamin C, ascorbic acid, lowers inflammation in the body. And kiwi also has some vitamin A, which is actually good for eyesight. All right. Kiwi also has a little bit of protein and some dietary fiber in the flesh. But vitamin C is what I go for when I actually want to eat kiwi. If you want to get the fiber, the benefit of the fiber, a lot of people don't know this, but the skin of the kiwi is also edible. Now, you wouldn't want to eat this kind of rough, hairy skin, just, biting it open like an apple. But the little trick, the pro tip, the hack for actually getting the most fiber out of a kiwi is to take off the skin and blend it into a smoothie. And you won't actually taste it at all, but you'll actually get a huge amount of edible fiber from the skin of the kiwi. So let's talk about the benefits, the health benefits of kiwi. Benefit number one, eating kiwis can protect your DNA. Now, our body's filled with DNA. DNA is our genetic code. Our DNA makes the proteins that are necessary for life itself. So we don't want that our DNA to be damaged. A lot of things can actually damage our DNA. For example, ultraviolet radiation can come in to damage our DNA. Off-gassing from a carpet could damage our DNA. If you're filling up your car with gas or petrol and you're smelling the fumes, well, you're actually inhaling some of these solvents that actually can damage your DNA. Ultra-processed foods, artificial preservatives, artificial colorings, all those things have the potential of damaging our DNA. And it turns out kiwi can protect it. Now, how do we know this? Well, we know this from clinical studies that have been done, because researchers from Rowett Research Institute in Scotland looked at the impact of eating kiwi on protecting DNA. And the way they did this is that they recruited 14 healthy volunteers and they gave them kiwi to eat. They gave them either 1 kiwi or 2 kiwi or 3 kiwis to eat each day, and then they drew their blood. And what they were interested in doing is finding out, compared to the very beginning, when they also drew their blood, to look at how well the blood had an intrinsic ability to protect their DNA. After kiwi eating, they actually drew the blood again, and they said, well, is there any differences? Well, it turns out that eating any number of kiwis, 1, 2, or 3, so even 1 could do this, could protect DNA from damage. In other words, the blood's ability to shield DNA from damage was increased by 60%. In other words, kiwi has an antioxidant effect. It protects against oxidative damage. What's interesting is they actually found eating 3 kiwis actually could improve the DNA by 66%. All right, so you actually had DNA rebuilding, repairing by 66%. Now, kiwi also has a bioactive called actinidin, and this is an enzyme that's used as a meat tenderizer. And it turns out in traditional Chinese medicine, kiwi was once used to aid digestion. So hundreds of years ago, there was this knowledge from a traditional healing perspective that kiwi, which now we know has actinidin, and that's an enzyme, can actually help you with digestion. All right. Now, we don't really know exactly what the degree of benefit is, but nonetheless, this is a digestive enzyme. Benefit number 2, kiwi can help with lower GI issues like irritable bowel syndrome and constipation. All right. And there was another clinical study, this time done in New Zealand, that looked at 58 people who had IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, and constipation. So they actually had less than 3 bowel movements a week. Now, that doesn't sound too bad to you. If you also have sort of an upset, crampy stomach, you can actually see that you start to think about your lower gut, and not having any more than 3 bowel movements a week, you notice it, and it's kind of irritating. So they actually gave the researchers gave the subject a kiwi extract, all right, that contains actinidin every day for 1 week. So they got 7 doses of actinidin, and then they followed them up a week later to see if there's any difference. And what they found is that the kiwi extract eaters had improved bowel movements, better regularity, and less overall abdominal pain, less cramping from the irritable bowel. They also experienced less bloating, and they were less gassy as well. So they're actually keeping things moving, all right? And whether it's due to the actinidin or the dietary fiber or some other factors, probably all of the above. Now, the other interesting thing is that other research have shown that actinidin can also promote wound healing. And, this is actually probably due to its enzymatic effect. If you have a wound that's not healing, one of the things you want to do to jumpstart the wound is actually to put some enzymes on it, and that'll actually kind of freshen up the wound, turns kind of a chronic wound into an acute wound, cleans up any of the bacteria and slough that might be on the surface of the wound, and that actually gives you a fresh layer for new tissue to heal and grow back. And that's actually something I've studied in the wound healing field, because you need blood vessels, angiogenesis, in order to be able to grow. So actinidin, which comes from kiwi, can actually be used, has been used and studied to be able to help promote wound healing. And speaking of that, the third benefit is that kiwi actually helps to heal diabetic wounds. Now, people with diabetes develop wounds, particularly on their lower extremities. So that's sort of below the knee, could be in the calf, the ankle, or the foot. And it can be on the bottom surface of the foot. And the reason is people with diabetes develop something called neuropathy. So when you have a constant state of high blood sugar and inflammation, it damages your blood vessels, and damaged blood vessels, damaged circulation, also damages the ability for nerves to function. Now, you might not realize how many nerves are on the bottom of your feet, but if you've ever walked on the beach in the sand and you felt that nice feeling of fine, crystal powder sand on the bottom of your feet, and it felt really good, that's because your nerve endings on the bottom of your feet are actually being stimulated. All right, so we got a lot of nerves on our feet, but in diabetes, without a good circulation, those nerves actually die back and they don't work quite as well. And when your nerves aren't working quite as well, guess what? If you step on a nail, if you step on a piece of glass, if you step on a soda can top that's been thrown on the ground, you won't feel it. And if you don't feel it, most people don't look at the bottom of their feet. You can have a cut, a small cut, that winds up getting dirty because obviously the bottom of your foot is actually a dirty surface in contact with relatively unclean areas. Even your shoe, not clean. But certainly if you walk around barefoot and you got a tiny little cut from stepping on a rock or stepping on a piece of glass and you don't feel it, then you're going to pick up bacteria, you're going to pick up dirt, all right? And in the condition of diabetes, that little tiny crack in the skin, which gets bigger and bigger because it doesn't heal, the blood vessels aren't healthy, so diabetic wounds have a real tough time healing. So it's the neuropathy, the problem with the nerves that leads to the injury. Can't feel the injury, so you keep on walking around on it. It gets dirty, it gets infected, and normally a wound would actually, the immune system would clean up in that wound. It would cause a little inflammation, clean up all the dirt, and then it would stimulate angiogenesis. Angio, blood vessel, genesis, how they grow. That's what I study. And it turns out that in diabetes, that process of immune cleanup doesn't happen very well because the immune system of people with diabetes is suppressed. You can have inflammation, but you won't have good immune response. And then the ability to grow blood vessels, angiogenesis, is also impaired in diabetes. Now you've got basically the perfect storm of an injury that's not going to heal. And that actually can happen on the foot, in the bottom of your foot, could happen on your ankles, could happen anywhere in the lower extremity. That's called a non-healing diabetic lower extremity ulcer, or if it's on the foot, a diabetic foot ulcer, also called DFU. Now, why is that a problem? Well, if your diabetic foot ulcer gets infected, you might not even know that you have a wound there until you start smelling the infection. And by that time, you might be on your way to not only an infected wound, but a gangrenous foot. And gangrene is really where the tissue begins to rot. And when that happens, not only might you need antibiotics, but in fact, in the most severe cases, if you don't actually have good wound care, that infected gangrenous foot, that diabetic foot ulcer, non-healing diabetic foot ulcers, can lead to an amputation. This is actually a really, really serious problem. It's kind of a silent epidemic because we know that diabetes is actually increasing. We know that obesity is increasing. We call it diabesity. And so the problem of chronic wounds is also increasing. Now, back to the kiwi. What they actually found is they took researchers again wanted to study this. So they researchers from Raf Salyan University in Iran looked at people with diabetes and having a foot ulcer, and they added a kiwi extract. Now remember, kiwi extracts that contain actinidin and vitamin C. They put it onto the wound, the non-healing wound, and they put a dressing on top of it. And they actually found that the application of the kiwi extract sped up wound healing, stimulated angiogenesis, decreased inflammation, cleaned up the wound, and sped up healing. All right, so this is not from eating a kiwi, but this is actually showing you the benefits of what's in a kiwi because you can extract it and you can put it right on top of a wound. Now, I'm not telling you to do that for yourself if you actually have a diabetic wound. That means if you have one of those, you should definitely see a doctor. You might want to see a surgeon who can actually evaluate it. You might want to see a podiatrist, a foot and ankle surgeon. And then there's wound healing clinics that can actually apply all kinds of really sophisticated methods to be able to help that wound heal. At all costs, you want that to heal. You don't want to let that one alone. Okay, now benefit number 4. Kiwi can heal other types of wounds like pressure ulcers. You know what a pressure ulcer is? An ulcer is a wound that occurs when there's skin on a surface pressing down with a lot of pressure on it. Just body weight creates a lot of pressure. Think about a person in a nursing home who is lying on their back all the time, all right, and not moving around. Or somebody in the intensive care unit who is kind of connected up to tubes and doesn't actually move. That pressure of the body presses on the skin, prevents blood flow from getting to that skin, and the skin actually breaks down. We actually need to move around. You have too much pressure in one area, not good. Eventually that tissue will die. Like I'll tell you, here's an example that you're going to relate to. You ever wait in line at a movie theater or for a concert? You know, you're waiting for the doors to open up. You're standing, right, with everyone else. What are you doing, actually, with your feet? Actually, what you're doing is you're actually shifting from side to side. All right, you might be walking back and forth, rocking back and forth, having one foot where you're actually tapping your toes or tapping your heel, moving it around. You know what that does? That takes the pressure off. All right. If you actually stood on your feet all day long without moving, eventually that tissue would not get enough oxygen and would actually start to die. So, pressure ulcers. Okay. Studies have actually shown that kiwi extract, again with actinidin, and this was done at the Isfahan University in Iran. They did a study on 40 patients with sacral ulcers. You know where your sacrum is? Your sacrum is where your tailbone is. So this is actually a very common type of ulcer in people who've had lots of surgery and they're on their back or in the intensive care unit or in a nursing home where they're lying down. And just the weight of the spine and the hips, all right, and the belly, the organs, pressing down on the sacrum, the tailbone, which is very thin. Go ahead and feel your tailbone right now. You'll see right that there's not a lot of skin, there's not a lot of tissue between the skin and your tailbone. That's why when you feel it, you're feeling the bone, the tailbone itself. Now you put a lot of pressure on that, it makes it really easy to cut off the blood flow, and then the tissue begins to die. When the tissue dies, the skin breaks down. When the skin breaks down, you have a wound, an ulcer, and that's what is called a sacral ulcer. So these researchers at Isfahan University looked at 40 patients with sacral ulcers, and what they found is that putting a kiwi extract on that sacral ulcer improved wound closure. Now, most likely what it did is that the actinidin, the enzyme, dissolved some of the dead, not very viable tissue in it, and it created a clean surface. But the other thing is that the researchers found that in the wound, there was increased blood flow, more wound healing angiogenesis. You need angiogenesis, you need new blood vessels to grow in order to be able to heal a wound. And it's quite amazing that an extract from kiwi is powerful enough to stimulate wound healing angiogenesis. All right. Again, this isn't from eating the kiwi, but this is showing you the power of what's inside the kiwi when you extract from it and even apply it to the skin. All right. Now, other studies have shown that kiwis are also good for gut health. So benefit number 5 is that kiwis can improve our oral microbiome. Now, you've heard of the gut microbiome, right? This is the 39 trillion healthy bacteria that live in our intestines. A lot of it lives in our colon in an area called the cecum, which is actually where your appendix actually lives. But the gut starts in the mouth and ends in the anus. Okay, it's about 40 feet long. And it turns out that kiwi improves our mouth microbiome. Now, this was figured out from a study from Japan that looks specifically at the microbiome on your tongue. All right. And what they did is look at 32 healthy young adults, and they looked at their tongue bacteria after getting a kiwi extract versus just brushing the tongue. Like, so good oral hygiene, you should brush your teeth. All right. You should floss, and then you should brush your tongue. And brushing your tongue just kind of wipes off some of the bacteria and cells that have accumulated on your tongue. It gives a fresh layer, and a healthy bacteria can kind of grow back on there, especially if you do this at night, overnight. And what they found is that these young people who had a kiwi extract tablet in their mouth actually had fewer harmful bacteria on their tongue. They had a better tongue microbiome. Now, tongue microbiome turns out to be really important for overall health. All right, because it can help control blood pressure. This is actually quite an amazing thing because studies have shown that if you eat foods like spinach or beets, these are vegetables, plant-based foods that grow close to the ground. They pick up a lot of nitrogen from the soil, and the nitrogen from the soil gets into the plants, gets into the spinach leaves, gets into the beetroot. And when you actually eat the spinach or eat the beets and you chew, not just chug it down and swallow it, like in one bite, but actually chew it, savor your food. I love the spinach sauteed in a little bit of extra virgin olive oil, a little garlic. I like to add some golden raisins, some pine nuts, maybe some chopped up apple. You get this and saute it, right? So you get this warm spinach, very, very interesting spinach vegetable dish. I like that. Or roasted beets. If you're eating foods that you actually savor, chew, 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 guess what happens? The spinach, in this case, gets into contact with your tongue, and therefore it gets into contact with your tongue microbiome, the healthy bacteria on your tongue. Now, what happens is that good, healthy tongue microbiome, and remember, eating kiwi tablets, the extracts containing the actinidin and other benefits from kiwi, made for a better tongue microbiome. And a good tongue microbiome will work on that spinach and convert the nitrogen from the soil that's in the leaves into a form that when you actually swallow, it gets absorbed into your bloodstream as nitric oxide, NO. Okay, and nitric oxide it's actually technically a gas, but when it's produced in our own body, as I just told you, but when it's in our body and it's produced, it does a lot of amazing things. One thing nitric oxide does is it actually relaxes and widens our blood vessels. You widen your blood vessel, guess what? Blood pressure goes down. And by the way, nitric oxide is how Viagra actually works. When you actually dilate the blood vessels, you get more blood in the penis, and that can help to maintain an erection. So therefore, eating spinach with good tongue microbiome helps your body produce and absorb more nitric oxide and relax your blood vessels, and it lowers blood pressure. That's actually really, really important. So spinach and beets will actually have that nitric oxide effect, and having the kiwi improves the tongue microbiome, and it's that tongue bacteria that you need to be able to have this beneficial nitric oxide effect. All right. Now, the other reason you want to have a good oral microbiome, including your tongue microbiome, is because having a better mouth microbiome, good bacteria in your mouth, helps to fight bad bacteria. Now, if you have bad bacteria in your mouth and it's not countered by the good bacteria, you got a problem. You know why? Bad bacteria causes gingivitis. Gingivitis, your gingiva are your gums, right? Your teeth are slotted into your gums, all right? And if you have gingivitis, the itis really stands for inflammation. Gingivitis is really inflammation of the tongue, usually due to overgrowth of harmful bacteria. So if you don't have enough good tongue bacteria, the bad bacteria overgrow. They get into your gums. They actually start to cause problems. They cause a lot of inflammation, and now you've got gingivitis. Interestingly, in the past decade, we've begun to realize that gum disease, gingivitis, overgrowth of bad bacteria in your mouth, on your gums, is actually linked to the development of dementia, all right, and also Parkinson's disease and Alzheimer's disease. And so now we're realizing that oral microbiome, when your mom told you to brush your teeth, when your dentist told you to brush your teeth and floss your teeth, I can tell you, they really knew what they were talking about. So the better the oral microbiome, which is a part of your gut microbiome, the better your brain health as well. So that's really, really important to be able to have that. And kiwi extracts can actually do that. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about the gut microbiome itself, because I started with the mouth and the tongue. Well, the other thing that kiwi does, this is benefit number 6, is that kiwi benefits the lower gut microbiome as well in your colon. Now, this is actually a study that was shown by looking at eating kiwi and looking at what happens to your gut microbiome by checking the poop, all right? Because you can actually take your poop now and do a swab. You kind of like a little swab, like the kind you use for a COVID test, but you swab your poop, you put it in a tube, you send it to the lab, and the lab will actually sequence the bacteria to check out what kind and how much bacteria is actually in your stool. And what they actually found is that by eating a kiwi, it changes your gut microbiome for the better within 24 hours. So one kiwi in 24 hours will change your gut microbiome, your gut bacteria, for the better. And if you actually wait 4 days, you'll see other bacteria that are also continuing to improve even more. So the effect is fast, even within a day, but over the course of a week, you actually get even further improvement. The bacteria that improve are like Lactobacillus reuteri. That's actually an important bacteria. And the bacteria, this good bacteria in the gut, also lowers inflammation, and it improves your immune defenses, shields up, inflammation down. That's what I'm talking about when you want to have good gut health. And good gut health, by the way, is good brain health. And so a kiwi actually can contribute its own role in doing this. And this is actually a great thing to actually eat during breakfast. It's one of my favorite times to actually sample a kiwi.
Hey there, I want to share another resource with you. It's my free guide on your body's 5 health defense systems. These 5 systems, angiogenesis, regeneration, your gut microbiome, DNA protection, and immunity, are your shields against disease, and they're responsible for maintaining your health every single day of your life. By knowing about how these systems work to defend your body, you can tap into their healing powers to live a longer, better, and much healthier life. I explain each of these defense systems to you in my free guide, and as a bonus, I've included some of the best foods you can eat to activate each defense system. Get my guide for free right now in the caption below. Now, back to the video.
Now, I got to tell you, one of the bacteria that improves is Lactobacillus reuteri in the gut by eating a kiwi. And I did research on Lactobacillus reuteri. I had a colleague, a collaborator at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. She was studying animals and studying gut microbiome. And what we actually found is that Lactobacillus reuteri, when you actually just put it in a drinking water of lab animals, all right? You know, if you ever had a hamster, right, in a cage, you put a bottle of water up, there's a little nozzle, and a hamster will go up there and start licking the bottom of it to drink water. Well, if you put Lactobacillus reuteri, okay, which is actually increased by kiwi in your body, if you just put that in the drinking water and the lab animals actually lick that, guess what it does? The Lactobacillus reuteri in the drinking water prompts the brain to secrete oxytocin. Oxytocin is a social hormone released by the brain. It's a hormone that actually makes you feel really great. When you see a friend at an airport, you haven't seen in a long time, you run up and give them a big hug, and you feel good. That's what Lactobacillus reuteri can actually do. And Lactobacillus reuteri increases when you actually have kiwi, right? Now, the other thing that better bacteria that kiwi can actually prompt, the improvement of your gut microbiome, is a good healthy bacteria in your gut produce a metabolite. So they actually produce their own products. They're called short chain fatty acids. Short chain fatty acids. So it's, fatty acid is like omega-3s or other kinds of fatty acids. But I can tell you that bacteria will produce them and release them. Healthy bacteria will produce short chain fatty acids. There's 3 of them: acetate, butyrate, propionate. Those are the 3 short chain fatty acids, and all of them go to work to our benefit. All right. When we feed our gut microbiome well, like giving them a kiwi, our gut bacteria pays us back by releasing these short chain fatty acids right into our bloodstream. And when they're in our bloodstream, which we can actually measure, they lower inflammation in our body. They boost our immune system, so we actually have shields are actually up. And the gut bacteria also text messages our brain and helps our brain release these social hormones like oxytocin. Now, let's talk a little bit about buying a kiwi at a store, right? Because at the end of the day, so Dr. Lee, you told me all about kiwi. What am I supposed to do? Well, listen, go to the grocery store. You're almost certain to actually find kiwi there. It's become very, very popular. And you buy them. Ideally, you buy them, they have a little bit of give to them, so they're not unripe. You want to get ones that are on their way to ripening. And you store that kiwi in the bag, like I told you, until it gets a little bit softer, but not too soft. And don't put it in your other fruit once it starts to soften up. You can keep a kiwi about a week or maybe 2, but you got to watch it. So you don't want to wait for it to over ripen. It won't taste really good. It'll be kind of mushy. But when it goes from being solid, like really hard, to being slightly soft, I would actually just eat it right then and there. It's absolutely delicious. What I like to do is just kind of cut it in half. You take a spoon, you can scoop out the fruit. It's actually delicious. You can actually, again, I mentioned this to you before, if you want to get all the dietary fiber benefit, go ahead and cut up the kiwi, include the skin, pop it in a blender and puree it. You won't even taste the skin. It just disappears. All that fiber's disappeared right into whatever it is you're making. And of course, fiber, if you have the fiber from kiwi skin in a smoothie, that'll supercharge your gut health because that's a big load of beneficial fiber. All right. Now, I like to eat kiwi for breakfast. If you have whole yogurt, and you want something sweet to put on top, I never buy the yogurt in a store that has pre-sweetened or has that layer of jelly in it. Nope. Buy whole yogurt, plain whole yogurt. All right. It's good for your heart. Trust me, because whole yogurt actually is probiotic. It's good for you. Helps to lower your lipids, in fact. And then you want something sweet. Take a ripe kiwi, cut it up, and just throw it right on top of the whole yogurt. And you want to kind of give it a little bit of texture. Take some pistachios or walnuts and crush them up, sprinkle it on top, and just take a spoon and eat the yogurt. Amazing, really, really amazing flavor. The sweet and slight tartness of the kiwi really balances out the richness of the yogurt, which is a dairy product, a probiotic dairy product, and the nuts give you a little crunch, a little extra texture. That's also great. So that's how I eat. That's how I often like to use kiwi for breakfast. But you can also eat kiwi as a dessert. Think about it. You take a kiwi that's nice and ripe, slice it in half. All you need is a spoon at the end. It's not too sweet. It's not like eating, a piece of cake with really sweetened icing. Nope. This is actually the most natural, mildly sweet and slightly tart fruit that's good for breakfast or good for dessert. Some people say the kiwi tastes a little bit like strawberry. I would say, yeah, that's a good way to describe it. Now, I'll tell you something. I've seen kiwi drinks in a can. All right. It's not soda. It's kind of a fruit juice with kiwi on it. You'll see this frequently. It's very popular in Asia, and you'll see them in an Asian grocery store. These are kind of like tall cans of kiwi drink. And by the way, they actually taste really good. There is real kiwi in it. But I will tell you that most of the time, just please look at the ingredient label. They add sugar in it. So there's added sugar, which is not something you need and not something you want. Added sugar overloads your metabolism. All right. But even worse, it can actually contain artificial flavors to actually enhance the kiwi taste. Artificial sweeteners like xylitol. Ugh, that is absolutely not what you actually want in a beverage. All right. So what I have to say, I was disappointed. I thought maybe there would be a fruit drink made with kiwi that would actually be great. So far, most of the kiwi drinks I've looked at actually have artificial sweeteners, artificial coloring. They call them natural flavors, but they don't tell you what it is. Makes me very, very suspicious. But you don't want any type of artificial sweeteners. You know why? Because artificial sweeteners can damage your gut microbiome. So xylitol, erythritol, sucralose, saccharin, all of those things, aspartame. So far, the research is not giving us good news. They actually damage the microbiome. When you actually damage the microbiome, which is normally keeping inflammation down, when you damage that function, guess what? Inflammation in your body rises. Your gut microbiome helps you process lipids. Here evens out your lipids, your blood cholesterol. So when you damage your gut bacteria, what happens? Your blood cholesterol can actually start to rise. So these are all kinds of things that you don't want to have happen. You don't never want to damage your gut microbiome, and you can avoid it. So unfortunately, I can't recommend a kiwi drink. It would otherwise be something that I think would be a really, really cool, kind of an exotic drink. I mean, I guess you could juice your own kiwis. That would be kind of a cool thing to do. So you might want to try that. You can add the kiwi to make a smoothie, add some other fruits, maybe strawberry and kiwi probably go together pretty well. All right, I hope you learned something new about kiwis today, something that you can actually put to use for breakfast or even for a dessert. This is actually something that I enjoy, eating kiwis every single day if I can get my hands on them. Thanks for watching this video, and I will catch you next time.
Hi there. If you enjoyed watching this video, I know you'll love the next one. Stay here and check it out, and I'll see you there.